such a situation? So that's the question. The Mishnah stated that you cannot shofar Rosh Hashanah to fulfill the mitzvah. You're not allowed to go ahead and remove the stones. That if there's a pile of rubble of stones to get to the shofar, because moving stones on Shabbat is a rabbinic prohibition of mukseh, and the rabbis did not permit mukseh, the Mishnah says, in order to enable you to fulfill the mitzvah of shofar. And rather, you better don't do the mitzvah that Shabbat, that Rosh Hashanah. You lose out, at least that day of Rosh Hashanah. You lose out the mitzvah, but not to violate the rabbinic prohibition of mukseh. Now, the question you're going to ask, a person might say, but this is a biblical prohibition, the biblical mitzvah, and this is the rabbinic mitzvah. So the rabbis. Well, right. A stone is mukseh because a stone, you don't have really purpose for a stone. Meaning items that there's no purpose, let's say pebbles on the floor, stones on the floor. They're not prepared for anything. They're not used for anything. Right, they have a status of mukseh. I can't go ahead and take my bare hands, and move stones on Shabbat. That will be a problem. Mukseh, just like dirt will be mukseh. There's no, there's no real purpose. It's not a utensil that I use. It's stones. So stones of the world are mukseh. And therefore, because the stones are mukseh, so even though within the stones there's a shofar, because that the room which contained the shofar, that wall fell down, and the shofar was on the shelf of the wall. And now, in order for you to get the shofar, you would have to move those stones with your hands. Technically, we said on Friday, if you want to kick the stones away, you should be able to do that because that's not the normal fashion of movement. And therefore, that will be called klach hayad, not in the normal way. Then you could move mukseh in the not normal way. Use the back of your hand, so on. But here, it's not going to do the trick. You're not going to be able to move these big stones with your foot. You have to actually use your bare hands. And therefore, we said the rabbis kept their rabbinic prohibition even under such a circumstance. Good morning, Adam. Good to see. At least we see your name, your holy name on the screen.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning. Now, there is a concept that when the rabbis tell us not to do something, and the Torah says to do something, if the rabbis will not tell us to do an action when the Torah says to do an action against the Torah, the rabbis will say maybe to hold off, be inactive. That means sometimes the rabbis made a prohibition. Let's say they said, don't handle mukseh on Shabbat. Don't move stones on Shabbat. Right? That was the rabbis. Now, by following that prohibition, even on Rosh Hashanah, I'm not going to be able to keep the mitzvah of shofar because I'm not going to be able to get to the shofar because the wall that there was the shofar on the wall, that wall fell down. And now I'm going to have to hold back from doing the mitzvah of shofar by keeping the mitzvah of mukseh. So that's called, good morning, Simon, that's called shev va'al taseh. You're sitting back, you're just not doing an action. You're not doing an action against the Torah. You're just being inactive. You're just not moving the item. Or let's say on Shabbat, let's say a different situation. Let's say Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbat. Right? When the Torah gave the law of shofar, the mitzvah of shofar was not specifically a weekday day was the mitzvah. Technically, the mitzvah of shofar is on Shabbat also. The first of Tishrei, the first of the new year, that's the blowing of the shofar. It's on Shabbat, just as Brit Milah, circumcision, is done on Shabbat. So shofar is done on Shabbat. But the rabbi said that they saw that if we're going to blow the shofar on Shabbat, people might come to carry the shofar. They might come to ask the rabbi, ask the expert how to blow. They might come to some question they have on the shofar. They might come to violate the Shabbat, and therefore the rabbi said, better not to blow the shofar. Better not to blow the shofar on Shabbat than to put yourself in a situation that then that you might come to desecrate the Shabbat. The rabbi saw that there was a need for the people to protect them, that they shouldn't come to blow the shofar on Shabbat. Sorry, not to come out to carry the shofar on Shabbat. And therefore, they said, be inactive. Don't do an action. Just don't do nothing. So you're not keeping the Torah, right? Because the Torah gave you a mitzvah, commandment, blow the shofar. But how are you not keeping the Torah? By being inactive. You're just not doing. You're not doing the mitzvah. You are missing out a mitzvah. So when you have an obligation to do a mitzvah, the person has an obligation to put on tefillin. They don't put on tefillin. They did not follow their obligation. They have not done what they're supposed to do. But there's one way not to do what you're supposed to do by being inactive. The guy was inactive. He did not blow the shofar. There's a way of being actively going against what you're supposed to do is by doing an action. If a person will go and eat not kosher, he wasn't inactive. He was actively violating the Torah. So there's two ways we have the ability to violate. A person has the ability to violate the Torah by being active, doing an active act like eating or drinking or doing certain things that you can't do. A person eats and drinks on Yom Kippur, Chas v'Shalom. He's being actively violating the Torah. But if a person does not blow the shofar, his going against the Torah is being done in an inactive way, by being passive. He's passively violating the Torah. And by passively violating the Torah, person does not, at that type of situation, the rabbis would put an enactment, a rabbinic law, if they felt it was necessary to protect the Torah law, even if the Torah law, even a different Torah law won't be kept. The blowing the shofar won't be kept, but it won't be kept in a way you're inactively, but you're not keeping it by being inactive, by not doing something. That's the type of situation the rabbis will make their decree. So we're on 32b, sorry, 33, 30, let's see where we're up to. 32b on the bottom, towards the bottom of the page, was probably in the art scroll, it's 32b4 in the Mishnah. So we said in the Mishnah, 32b4, we said about Shofar Shel Rosh Hashana, Ein Ma'avinu as a Tchum. We spoke about the Tchum, a certain how much on Shabbat. You cannot walk outside the city limits more than 2,000 amot. So even if the shofar is more than 2,000 amot away, you can if it's more than 2,000 amot away, you cannot leave the city limits to go get that shofar, to violate the law of Tchum. Similarly, and we spoke about that in the country, that's more of an issue. There's places in the country that you might have issues that, when you're outside the city where there's no houses, at a certain point, you might have that issue. We said you cannot remove the pile of stone that we spoke about a moment ago to get to the shofar. Lo olim be'ilan. The Mishnah says you cannot go up a tree. Let's say you have the shofar, you kept the shofar on top of the tree. You had a little tree house. Morning, Eric. Good to see you back. We cannot go up a tree on Shabbat. You can't climb trees on Shabbat. Good morning. And you can't climb the tree on Shabbat, even though maybe on top of the tree you stored your shofar. You had a little, someone's child, someone's relative was, took the shofar up they had a little playhouse on top of the tree, and he put it there, and he was supposed to take it down before Rosh Hashana, and he didn't take it down before Rosh Hashana. And that's where your shofar is. You can't go up. Just want to remind everyone to say the Birkat HaTorah, right, Aaron? Before, the Ashek Yishem, the Al Divrei Torah, and Asher B'Chabana, before we learn. And even though that's a rabbinic prohibition, but still, they kept their rabbinic prohibition, even though you're going to miss out on doing the mitzvah of shofar. We spoke about you can't swim on the water to get the shofar. Let's say the shofar on the other side of the river. and you got to go. You want to get. You can't do that on Shabbat. Shabbat, you're not allowed to swim. And we said the Ein Chotana. So the last thing that we were talking about, if let's say you want to go ahead and make it shofar. Let's say it was already, you had to go ahead and cut out the shofar, whether it's talking about detaching it from the animal or once, even if it's already, it's right over there. And even if it's already detached from the animal, but to carve it out properly to make it into a proper shofar, you cannot make it into a shofar on Yom Tov. So if you did not prepare the shofar before Yom Tov, Mr. Haber, is that the chair is all right, Mr. Haber? If you didn't prepare the shofar before Shabbat, I don't want you falling off okay. So if you didn't prepare the shofar before Shabbat, you can't scrape out and prepare the shofar, make the shofar a utensil, a ready to roll use on Shabbat. But that would be a biblical prohibition of making a utensil, right? If you go ahead and you cut it off the animal's head on Shabbat, or even if it was already previously cut off the head, if you just cut it out and scrape it out and make it usable, that will be a problem. But the Mishnah states that sometimes there are different utensils that are used for this process. So whether ben b'davar shehu isem mishum shvut, whether the act of cutting, you're using a item that would be a rabbinical prohibition to use, and I think the Gemara will say there's certain types of instruments that are the norm that you would use, and certain instruments that's not the norm. If it's not the normal instrument, so then that would be a rabbinic. We'll see that. Well, maybe that'll be a rabbinic prohibition. It's not the normal. So we're saying whether it's rabbinic prohibition or whether, and for sure, if it's a biblical prohibition, you cannot cut the shofar to size on Rosh Hashanah, even though you will miss out the Torah mitzvah of shofar. Now, if you want to place in the shofar water, you want to wash the shofar out, or use water or wine. It seems that wine, I would say you should use the wine if water doesn't do the trick, because you don't want to waste wine. Wine, about that. But if you have, sometimes it's the liquid of the water or the wine that'll make the sound of the shofar a better sound. By maybe it cleans it makes it clearer. Maybe there are certain things that if you have on the shofar that will hold back the beautiful sound of the shofar. But if you go ahead and you clean it out, the cleaning that the Mishnah said they did not consider a problem, or the Rambam says use vinegar on the shofar. That they did not say is a problem on Rosh Hashanah. It's not considered fixing the utensil, because even if you don't wash it out, it's still usable. Meaning this is not making it into a utensil. You're washing it out with some water or some vinegar or some wine, and so therefore you're allowed to do that on Rosh Hashanah. Now the Mishnah continues. Ein Bezdin, the court does not ein ma'akvin tinokot. The children, let's say the child wants to go ahead and practice blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. He wants to become an expert. It's a beautiful thing to train children to blow the shofar. Really, shofar, the mitzvah of shofar, every person has a mitzvah to blow a shofar. Except we listen to someone blowing the shofar, and that's as if we did the mitzvah. But the trick under bar mitzvah, right? So tinokot, yeah, right. Like there's an expression tinokot shel beit rabban. The children, like if you want to refer to the yeshiva students, right? There's an infant would be more like tapim, taf, like noshim betaf. This is like children that we're going to see. The Gemara is going to talk about what's the age of this child, but at this point we'll translate it children who are capable of blowing the shofar, and they want to blow the shofar. They want to become experts in blowing the shofar. So even though on Rosh Hashanah we adults don't we don't practice on Rosh Hashanah. If let's say if I want to decide on Rosh Hashanah, I want to go ahead and practice becoming, I already heard the shofar. Well, I don't plan on blowing the shofar for Rosh Hashanah, but I just want to, it's Rosh Hashanah, I want to blow the shofar. So really, you just don't blow the shofar just like this on Rosh Hashanah. To practice becoming a um, a person to blow the shofar, that we don't do on Rosh Hashanah. But it's interesting here. But the Gemara says for the children, the Mishnah says for the children, we go ahead and we let them. Just want to say hello to Jaime. Jaime, thank you for being back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's very appropriate that Jaime's back. We're talking about children and training children on the shofar. So Jaime's I think that's just a subject that Jaime would be very happy to hear about. So
Thank you.
The Mishnah is talking about Rosh Hashanah. We're in the fourth parak of Rosh Hashanah, where the Mishnah talks about certain things that you're not allowed to do on Rosh Hashanah. And we said we can't cut the shofar off the head of the animal on Rosh Hashanah in order to enable you to blow the shofar. And in general, if an adult wants to just train himself on Rosh Hashanah, wake up on Rosh Hashanah, I just want to blow the shofar for the fun of it, to train myself. That you're supposed to train yourself before Rosh Hashanah. And but a child, we say, the Mishnah states, "Ein ma'akvin tinokot l'tkoa." We don't hold the children back, even though, let's say, on a regular Rosh Hashanah is Yom Tov. On a regular Yom Tov, let's say the holiday of Sukkot, can a person blow the shofar on the holiday of Sukkot? Let's say not for the mitzvah shofar. I wanna blow shofar. I can't blow shofar. It's like a musical instrument. The rabbis say we don't play musical instruments on Shabbat. On Yom Tov, we don't play musical instruments. And the reason, maybe sometimes some instruments have chords, and maybe the chord will break and you'll fix it. You come to violate the Torah's prohibition of fixing a utensil, making a utensil work that doesn't work by fixing it. So the rabbis said we don't do music on Yom Tov. We don't do music on Shabbat. But the rabbis, obviously, for Rosh Hashanah itself, the rabbis did not place their prohibition of not doing a shofar, because then you will not be able to do the mitzvah shofar ever. So the rabbis said, that you could blow the shofar. You blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, but an adult, let's say post bar mitzvah, should not be blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah just for the fun of it. Just like this, let's say shofar was over. You already heard the shofar. I want to blow shofar. You can't. There's no purpose, and you have no right to blow the shofar after the shofar was. However, if children want to go ahead and practice blowing the shofar, so the Mishnah states we don't hold them back from blowing the shofar on Hashanah. And not only that, aval misaskin behem, we actually help them. We tell them. Now the question is, how much do we help them? Is a question of discussion in among the commentaries. We either, some say you tell them to blow, you encourage the children to blow on Rosh Hashanah. You help, but the adult himself shouldn't. So some say the adult himself should not actually blow. You show him how to blow without actually blowing, right? Maybe you'll show him the position of the shofar. You'll give him some halachot. Generally, we do it on the right side. You'll tell him. You give him some pointers. How do you blow the shofar? But you will not actually blow the shofar itself, according to some commentaries, and others say you actually are allowed to blow with them. You want to show them the sound and tell them you actually go ahead and actually blow them. You don't just say two, 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 two. You actually could show them actually blow the actual shofar. Those are different opinions in the early commentators. It seems they bring down from the Rabbi, the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah would be the Rabbi Yosef Cairo, that not to actually, those should not himself actually blow the shofar. Okay, but we see this great allowance for the children of a mitaskin imahem. You work with the children until they know how to blow the shofar, because this is a way to training. We're training them in the mitzvah. So that is and this is a special allowance, and they're allowed to blow even as much it's even as much as they want in order to that's what it would seem like, in order to become experts in the shofar. Now the Mishnah continues, Vahamit asek lo yotza. If somebody, let's say, you're blowing a shofar. I'm sorry, you're not blowing a shofar. Let's say you meaning there's something called blowing a shofar. I'm intending to blow a shofar, right? I take a shofar, I tend to blow. And let's say I wasn't intending to blow the shofar, but the sound came out. The sound came out with the shofar near. We have to figure out the scenario. The shofar near me. I wasn't intending to blow the shofar, and I was. I didn't even know there was a shofar there, and somehow the sound came out. The sound of shofar came out. Let's say I blew a tkiyah. I blew a sound. Is that considered? Would that sound be considered a good blowing? It came out good, but I had no intention of blowing. So we'll see more details on that in the case as the Gemara will unravel what's the case. You blew without intention to blow. Lo yotza, you do not fulfill your mitzvah. You have to have intention to blow. That's what the Mishnah seems to be saying. So now the question is there is an old question. To fulfill a mitzvah, do you need to have intent to fulfill a mitzvah? Or do you get credit for a mitzvah even if you didn't intend to do the mitzvah? Let's say on Rosh Hashana, a person takes the shofar and they were blowing the shofar for musical purpose, for music. They like the sound of the shofar, and they actually blew all the sounds of the shofar. They blew the tkiya, and they were let's say they were blowing the shofar without I want to show you how I blow shofar, right? I wasn't intending to do the mitzvah, and I want to show you. I learned how to blow shofar, and I want to show you how I blow the shofar. Good morning, Morris. And I do the whole thing, but I wasn't intending to do the mitzvah. Do I get credit for the mitzvah? Because at the end of the day, I did the mitzvah. I wasn't intending to do the mitzvah. Or do we say, since I wasn't intending to do the mitzvah, you don't get credit. You have to do the mitzvah again, right? So that is a major discussion in the Gemara. Of course, you're supposed to, lechatchila, always have intention before you do a mitzvah, right? And that's what before you put on tefillin, someone was telling me yesterday about, encouraging people to, before they put on the tefillin, there's something to say, but hinni muchan masuman l'kayim mitzvah tefillin. I'm getting ready to put on, let's say here in the siddur in the shul, we have here in the Sukkah David, Yerushalayim Siddur, says before you put on your tefillin, you say L'Shem Yuchad Kudshu. There's something to say about I have in mind by putting on the tefillin, which talks about the Exodus, to put on my hand, corresponding to the opposite the heart, and on the head, corresponding opposite the head, the brains, to remember the miracles and that God that happened in Egypt, and shows that God has the power to do what He wants. And I'm going to serve God with the soul that I have, which is in my brain and my heart, which is the main place of thought. And and there's a whole thing to say. Similarly, there's something to say before putting on the talit. L'shem yuchad kudshu. This is a holy thing to say. So he was encouraging people to say that. And I think one of the purposes of saying those statements before is to put your mind into what you're about to do, to set up. I'm about to do this mitzvah. Think about it. Have the proper intent, proper kavanah. So that is. So that's a question. Do you get credit for a mitzvah if you did not intend to do the mitzvah, but you did it? It was done. Which if a person would take a lulav and etrog without intending to do the mitzvah, and he picked up the lulav, picked up the esrog.
Rabbi, doesn't the rule apply mitzvot tzrichot kavanah to everything?
So you're right. Lechatchila, you definitely do need kavanah, but the Gemara has a whole discussion whether at the end of the day, if a person did not do with kavanah, it doesn't get credit. We generally hold. I could take out the Shulchan Aruch. What I recall, if it's a biblical mitzvah, you should definitely do it again. Meaning, if you did a mitzvah without intent, right? You did not intend to do the mitzvah. Let me just get you did not intend to do the mitzvah, you did it. You should do the mitzvah again. But whether you would make a brach, but I would say most probably you would not make. I would say most probably you might not make a bracha on that mitzvah that you did without intent. That I would have to check up. But because just like if a person took a lulav and etrog without kavanah, if he took it the right way, he would redo it. But I don't think he would make the bracha if he took it the right way. We say, so you're right. For sure, on the right there, we will do it over again. If a person did the mitzvah without intent, he would do it again. But there is a machloket in the Gemara. The Gemara has a whole discussion whether you need to do it again if you did the mitzvah without kavanah. That is the, you know what I'm saying, Jaime? I'm saying even though you're supposed to have kavanah to do a mitzvah, in Shulchan Aruch it says the following. It says, the Shulchan Aruch says, some say mitzvot don't need, in order to fulfill the mitzvah, you do not need intent. This is chapter 60 in the Shulchan Aruch, paragraph 4. Some say you do not need intent in order to get credit, and some say you need intent in order to get credit, and that is the law. Like Jaime said, Jaime, you got the Shulchan Aruch is on your side, right? Okay. Right, Morris? The Shulchan Aruch says that, he says that is the law, and there's a very large discussion in the Chafetz Chaim, in the Mishabura, there regarding this point. But he brings up there are authorities that say that this only by biblical laws will we say that after the fact if you don't get credit for it, you have to do it again. But there are those that say some make a distinction between rabbinic law and Torah law, and others, and he says, but many places in Shulchan Aruch, it implies that Rabbi Yosef Kaira holds there is no difference between rabbinic law and biblical law, that you do not, if you did the mitzvah without intent, you do not get credit in it. So that is, so our Mishnah, so the question, the Gemara is going to discuss the case of our Mishnah. Is our Mishnah this seems to be supportive or not supportive? Because here the case of the Mishnah was you were engaged in the mitzvah, or you performed the mitzvah, you were doing something, you were doing an act, you were busy doing something, you were misasek, you weren't focused on the mitzvah, and the mitzvah was performed. And the Mishnah says, lo yotza, you do not get credit for the mitzvah. So we'll see more in the Gemara, more details about this act. See, the question will be, is it that you don't get credit because you didn't have intention to blow? But if you had intention to blow, even if you did not have intent to do the mitzvah, you would get credit. Or even if you had intention to do the mitzvah, even if you had intention to blow, but since you weren't intending to do the mitzvah, you don't get credit. We'll have to see. But that's what the Mishnah says. If a person was busy doing something, and at the end of the day, the sound of the shofar came out, he wasn't intending to do the mitzvah of shofar, he does not get credit. Not only the person who blew the shofar without intending to does not get credit, but if you were listening to his blow, Asaf was right nearby, and he would say, "Oh, I see the guy has a shofar. You know what? I'll listen to his shofar." I was having in mind to fill the mitzvah shofar, but the guy who blew the shofar was not having in mind to do the mitzvah shofar. So the Mishnah states, I don't get credit, even though I heard a shofar blowing. The one who blew doesn't get credit, and the one who was listening, even though he was listening with the intent to fulfill the mitzvah, but since the person that was blowing did not um, have intention to do the mitzvah, you do not get credit for the mitzvah. So there is a rule that when you want to fill a mitzvah, you have to have intention, and the person who, if someone wants to be cover you, so to speak, he has to have you in mind. He has to have you in mind. So here the situation is the person who was blowing is not able to fill this mitzvah because he wasn't intending to blow. So you listening to it you did not fulfill your mitzvah. So that's what the Mishnah teaches us. Okay. So now the Gemara wants to understand why, why don't we say that the mitzvah of shofar should override the rabbinic, should override certain laws, meaning we have the mitzvah of shofar and we have the prohibition of Yom Tov, right? You can't do work on Yom Tov. And the Mishnah stated you can't violate the Yom Tov to enable the mitzvah of shofar. And the Gemara explains, my timer, what's the reason why we have a general rule, asay doche lo saseh. If you have a positive commandment, and if the positive commandment is going up against a lo saseh, something that Torah says don't do, and if you cannot fulfill and they're clashing at each other, so there's a rule. Now there's a lot of details to the rule that a positive commandment could overpower a lo saseh, a lo saseh commandment that Torah says don't do. What would be an example? An example would be, let's say, kalayim b'tzitzit. Let's say a situation that happened that a guy had a garment, and let's say the garment was a linen garment, and he had the blue wool string of tchelet. He was going to go, can he put in the blue wool of tchelet in this linen garment? So blue wool and linen is a prohibition of shatnez, mixing of the wool and linen together. But the mitzvah is happening simultaneously. By at least question by daytime, would you be able to wear such a garment on a Torah level? On a Torah level, technically the mitzvah of tzitzit, of this putting in this blue thread, wool thread, would overpower the prohibition of shatnez. And technically, you should be able, on a Torah level, the question would be, obviously, at nighttime, where many say there's no mitzvah of tzitzit at night, morning. You see, the question is there no mitzvah of tzitzit at night at all, or is no mitzvah of tzitzit on a day garment and on a night garment? Some say that a day garment you wear at night, you get credit. There is a mitzvah, but on a Torah level, you should be able to wear that tzitzit during the day. The mitzvah, positive commandment, should overpower the lo saseh, the negative Torah says not to do. So here we have the mitzvah of shofar, which is a positive commandment. Go blow the shofar. And now we have the lo saseh, don't do work on Yom Tov. So why? And now if I need to do some work on Yom Tov, if I need to cut it off the animal's head or fix it or make it, why shouldn't the asay, the biblical obligation of shofar, overpower the lo taseh of don't do work on Yom Tov? So the Gemara says shofar is an asay. Shofar is a asay. We're turning the page on 32 in Rosh Hashana, fourth parak, 32b5. The Gemara says shofar is an asay. but Yom Tov is an asay and a lo saseh. Yom Tov, there's not only a lo saseh that a person will violate, that the Torah says don't do work on Yom Tov, right? You're not supposed to do malacha on Yom Tov, but also there is a positive commandment to rest on Yom Tov. There's something that's a lo taseh, don't do work, and then there's a positive, be a rest. So when a person does a violation, does work on Yom Tov, let's say he would make the shofar the size on Yom Tov, cut it out, that will be violating two laws, a lo taseh and an aseh. So an aseh, a positive commandment, can knock out a lo taseh, can knock out a don't, but it can't knock out the don't and a do. So since it's going up against a lo taseh and aseh, it's going up against call it a negative and a positive. So the positive does not have the power to knock out the negative and the positive, and therefore, that's why it doesn't knock it out. But not only that, that even rabbinic law, once the mitzvah of shofar does not knock out Torah prohibitions, the rabbis when they institute their laws, they many times mirror their laws the way the Torah prohibition. And since in the Torah, meaning that since in the Torah the mitzvah of shofar does not knock out Torah prohibitions, so they said there the mitzvah of shofar will not knock out rabbinic prohibition. They gave the power of their rabbinic prohibition similar to the Torah in that sense. You can't knock it out, and therefore the Mishnah stated you can't, if you have the shofar, Mr. Haber, right? We said if the shofar is in a pile of stone, right? The wall fell down that you kept your shofars on a nice shelf on the wall, and the wall fell down and it's under stones, right, Aaron? You can't move the stones to get to the shofar. Moving stones, handling with your hands on Yom Tov is mukseh, and rabbinic prohibition will remain intact even though you're not going to be able to fill the mitzvah of shofar. You're not going to get the shofar. But that's how far that's how you have to keep the rabbinic law in such a case. As we explained earlier, the rabbinic law was the rabbi said, because we're afraid you might come to carry the shofar on Shabbat, you don't blow the shofar of Rosh Hashana on Shabbat, because they want to protect it's a rabbinic law, yes.
So first thing you said, I just want to make sure I understand, saying a positive can offset a low toxic.
Yes.
Okay, so wouldn't that allow you to make seeds and steal the materials to do that?
No, so again, there's another law called right mitzvah haba ba'avera. There you're going ahead and when you steal something, that was a sin that you did, and also there's other rules why. So you can't do a mitzvah that's done through sin, right? A guy had no right to steal it. Then that's God does not want such a mitzvah. That's not a right. It's a low taseh, but you went ahead. But that's here. The question is, you're doing this violation because you need it in order to perform the mitzvah. Meaning, first of all, there's another rule. If the stealing happened only when they're coming at the same time, there's another rule. Is in order to do the mitzvah, is when the mitzvah and the positive commandment and the negative are coming simultaneously. But if you stole, that was done it wasn't done simultaneously with the mitzvah. The mitzvah wants to come later on. But they're going to ask that question over here. They're going to ask the question, are they happening at the same time? Doesn't seem like they're happening. The mitzvah of shofar and the cutting out of it is at two different times. So good morning. So why do you have to come on to this rule that, asay, the positive commandment, can't knock out a negative and a positive? It can't knock out a negative if they're not happening at the same time as well. The only time the positive commandment can knock out a low taseh, is only when they're coming simultaneously at the same time. So here they do ask the question. Here they don't seem to be coming at the same time. So why do we even have to come on to the fact that there is the positive commitment is going against two things, a negative and a positive. Even if the positive going just against the negative, it should not have the power to knock it out. But the rabbis create a fence. The rabbi's fence is that we don't go ahead. Even when they created this rabbinic fence, because if you're going to go ahead and they don't want you to go ahead and move mukseh on Shabbat. That's a rabbinic law. That's a rabbinic fence that the rabbis say mukseh is a rabbinic fence, protects the Torah. Let's say if you don't, because a lot of times certain things are mukseh. If you would handle mukseh, you might come to actually violate the Shabbat, right? If I go ahead and I handle money, I might, or handle tools, I might come to use them, right? I might. So therefore, the rabbis enact they have to protect the Torah. So therefore, when the rabbis went so far that they made their rabbinic enactment, even if you're not going to be able to fulfill a biblical law, many times their rabbinic law will be in play. And this is the case in the Mishnah when it's in play on Rosh Hashana, but there's a shofar on the floor under the rubble. You can't move the rubble in order to get to the shofar. Okay, I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Jaime, welcome back. Wishing everybody
Thank you.
all the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.